Hey, where are you right now?
Where am I? I'm on vacation with our daughter. Thought I told you last weekend.
Oh, that's right. Then can you put Naya on the phone for me then?
She fell asleep about 10 minutes ago. I can't do that. Maybe you should have called me a little bit earlier.
Okay then. I understand. Have fun on your trip. My name is Samantha, and I'm a 30-year-old part-time housewife. I live with my husband, Arthur, and my daughter, Nia. I met my husband through my dad.
There is someone I want to introduce you to.
And the man whom he introduced me to was Arthur, who eventually became my husband. My father loves me very much, and he said he wouldn't let me marry anyone else unless the guy was one he'd introduced me to. That was often an inconvenience to me, and there were times he and I had big arguments about how our opinions differed about the subject of marriage. I wanted to find a man and be the judge of whether or not he was the right one for me, and he wanted to keep me in safe and trustworthy hands, which he himself knew. Because of my views, I'd always turned down everyone he'd ever introduced me to. But Arthur was my type, unlike any other, and we had lots of things to talk about. As a result, it didn't take very long before we started dating. It was a smooth transition from lovebirds to newlyweds, and our relationship was the closest you could get to perfection. My dad was very happy, and soon thereafter, we were blessed with a baby. The pregnancy went on without any problems, thankfully, and I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom we named Nia. As a family, we were absolutely drenched in love. And as soon as Nia started going to preschool, I went back to my job. Ever since I was a little girl, I always dreamed of working for a cosmetics company. That's why I loved my job so much. I found it very rewarding, and I wanted to keep doing it for the rest of my life. That's why I wanted to go back to work as soon as my child started preschool. My husband was very supportive and always did what he could to help out, until then. But at around the same time that I went back to work, whether it was because his job suddenly made him very busy, it's unclear, but his time at home decreased drastically, and we had very little family time together. Even though I was busy often, I was almost always able to head home at a fixed time. That's why I could pick up my daughter, take her home, and stay with her until he came home for dinner and time together before her bed. But my husband started coming home more often at a time when my daughter wasn't awake. He claimed it was because of overtime hours, and not only did he come home late more often, he started working on holidays more and more frequently. And one thing that stood above all else was the fact whenever he had work on days off, the smell of a woman's perfume was pretty much his inseparable companion. I only got more and more sure that Arthur must be having an affair. We weren't having any conjugal relations whatsoever anymore, which only made my suspicions all the more convincing. I was darn near completely certain by this point, but I didn't have the courage to speak out about this, because I had a daughter to take care of. I also didn't have the courage to get a divorce. I didn't want her to be lonely and miss her father. Just spending time less with her daddy made Nia very lonely already. Thinking about how she would be if her daddy was removed completely from her life was not a pleasant thing to think about. I couldn't take her father away from her. Just the other night, before bed, "Daddy's not like that, darling. He loves you so much, and he's working so hard to make you very happy."
But I don't get to see Daddy.
"Maybe next time. I'll ask him if he can get off on his day off. I'm sure he'd love to come with us."
Okay, Mommy.
Well then, how about we get excited for a little trip together and be a good girl and get some I comforted her, and her smile and quiet giggling made me convinced she was satisfied. She then quickly fell asleep. I felt so sorry for Nia to put her through this. That's why I wanted to make sure we spend time together as a family on holidays and listen to Nia's wishes. But Arthur had to work on holidays. If he didn't make any effort to make time to spend with his daughter every once in a while, I thought maybe it would be better to go through with the divorce. I had been thinking about it for a long time, when I suddenly got an order to go on a business trip. It was during busy season at my company, and there were so many things to do that any other option was just impossible. I simply had to go on a business trip. I wish I could ask my parents for help, or my parent-in-laws, but they all were a little ways away from my home, so it was difficult to arrange for them to take care of Nia. I concluded I had to rely on my husband, and so I decided to ask him for help.
Damn, that's tough.
I'm sorry, honey, but do you think you could take care of Nia over the holidays?
I haven't been able to make time for her lately, it's true, and it's a long holiday weekend. I think I'll take Nia on a trip. I know I've made her feel lonely these days. I should make it up to her.
Wait, are you sure? Think you can handle an entire trip alone together with her? Up until then, Arthur had never really been involved in childcare, and that's why I wondered if it would be alright for the two of them to suddenly go on a trip somewhere together. But the fact he was thinking about taking time with my daughter reassured me and made me happy.
I know that if she could spend some time with me, her own daddy, maybe she'd be a lot happier. And also a trip together with my daughter had always been a dream of mine. You know, I know we'd love it.
She would love that very much. Thank you, honey.
You take a little break from parenting too, Sam. You go on ahead, stretch your wings a bit, and have fun on your business trip.
Thanks, I will. I was so relieved and so overjoyed to know that Arthur was thinking about us as a family. When I told Nia about the little trip her daddy was planning for her, she was so happy. It was the most precious moment I'd experienced in a while.
I'm going on a trip together with Daddy? Yay! I wanna go.
Mommy can't go with you because of her work this time, but you can have them all to yourself, sweetheart.
I'm so happy. I was gonna bring my best friend, Brian the bear.
The amount of happiness she displayed in those moments were simply incredible. As a mother, it filled my heart with such emotion, too. Her best friend, Brian the bear, is the stuffed bear her daddy had given her for her 4th birthday. Nia had always treasured it with her life. I genuinely thought Arthur was cheating on me up until then, but seeing how much we mean to him and how he was thinking about us, a huge sense of relief and joy washed over me again. I guess he was really just busy with work, and I was completely wrong. I ought to tell you how pleased I was with myself for never bringing the subject up. Then came the day I was to leave for my business trip. My husband and daughter sent me off with smiles on their faces. Rather than have them stay alone at home all weekend, leaving them to go on their trip to refresh themselves allowed me to go on my business trip without worrying about anything at all. And that evening, after work, I received a call on my phone. I looked at the caller, and the number was that of our telephone at home. I thought it was strange because they were supposed to be on their trip. I quickly answered the phone and discovered a voice quivering with sadness. I knew instantly that the crying belonged to my daughter.
Mommy, Daddy's not coming home.
Wait, what? Slow down, Nia, darling. What's wrong? My crying daughter was calling my personal number from home of all places. I just couldn't understand the situation at all. But, judging from the fact that my own daughter was crying, it couldn't be good. What did she mean that Daddy's not coming home? She was supposed to be on a trip with him, wasn't she? Questions filled my mind faster than I could coherently process. I thought you went home, got ready, and went on that fun trip of yours, darling.
We went to the store after we said bye-bye to you, Mommy, and then we went home, and then Daddy went somewhere else.
What? So you're not on your trip with Daddy? You stayed home the whole time?
Yeah. Mommy, I'm scared. I miss you. I miss Daddy. Is I gonna be all alone tonight, too?
Listen, sweetheart, I'm gonna call my job first, and I'm gonna go home, okay? I promise I'll call you back later, so promise me you'll pick up the phone, okay? I told her that before hanging up, and then I called my company and explained the situation. They allowed me to go home and take care of everything. I called home again, and never hung up until I went all the way home. Nia was crying the whole time, and it was hard not to lose my goddamn mind while I tried to comfort her for more than an hour. And when I did get home, my daughter was cowering, crying, in a ball on the floor. I looked at the floor and found her best friend Brian the bear lying on his back on the living room carpet. Right next to him, on the small living room table, was a feast of food and lots of water prepared. It was then that I became so sure that Arthur had originally planned to leave her behind. That explains why all the food was mostly her favorite foods. He'd bought them at the supermarket so she could survive all on her own as he went on his own merry way somewhere else. I rushed to Nia, picked her up, and held her tight in my arms. She started to bawl, and my spirit broke down right then as well. It took us about an hour to stop crying.
Daddy doesn't like me. He hates me.
No, sweetheart, that's not true. That's not true. I'm so sorry, Nia. I'm so sorry. Oh my god, the heartache. Even now, recollecting that moment in time is making me tremble. My daughter was crying because she thought her own daddy hated her. It must have been so painful. I'd do anything to prevent her from feeling anything like that again. After we both calmed down, I fed her, bathed her, and put her to bed. After she went to sleep, I decided to call Arthur. Hey, where are you right now?
Where am I? I'm on vacation with our daughter, honey. And we're having so much fun. We went to an amusement park today, and I'm thinking of taking her shopping or something tomorrow. You know, it's always been a dream of mine, me and my daughter, on a trip, just the two of us. I'm so glad that dream came true.
Oh, that's right. Then, can you put Nia on the phone for me then?
What was that? You want to talk to Nia?
I want to hear her voice. I want to hear how much fun she's having with her daddy.
Well, she fell asleep about 10 minutes ago. I can't do that. Maybe you should have called me a little bit earlier. You know how grumpy she gets when someone wakes her up from a deep sleep. Too bad, honey.
My husband sounded like he was having the time of his life. Needless to say, I was furious. He had the frickin' audacity to leave our 4-year-old daughter behind and run off on his own trip somewhere, maybe with some kind of whore at his side. I'm sorry, excuse my language. I just cannot forgive the fact he risked survival of his own daughter because he wanted something more than what he already has. How the hell can he sound so happy when he's done the unthinkable? He probably didn't even know his daughter was crying, thinking her own daddy hated her, and went off gallivanting to his heart's content. I was sure the trip he was planning was for him and his lover, and not his daughter. I can no longer consider this bastard my husband. I can never forgive him, and I will never forgive him. I made up my mind to divorce him. You really sound like you're enjoying the trip so much, honey. Why don't you stay there for another while?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm sure Nia would too, but you're coming back the day after tomorrow, aren't you?
About that, I'm really sorry, honey. I just can't seem to get my work completely finished. There's always something more that has to be done. I have no choice but to extend my business trip.
Oh. Okay.
There is a slim chance things will pull through, and it won't have to be extended. I'll call you again if I can come home as planned, but I'm almost 100% sure it's going to be longer than I'd planned.
I see.
I'll probably be out of town for 2 more days. I was originally going to stay 2 nights and 3 days, and I'm sure that was your plan too, but now I'm going to stay for 4 nights. Why don't you do that too?
I wonder if we'll find enough things to do.
Why don't you go visit some places outside, wherever it is you are? He pretended to think about it for a minute before he answered.
Then I guess I'll take your word for it and add 2 more nights to our trip.
Awesome. I'm sure Nia will love that.
Let me know if your trip's not extended after all, okay?
Yep, I'll let you know.
Well, I guess we'll have fun again tomorrow and beyond. She was so excited today, and she also insisted she buy you a souvenir. Hope you're looking forward to it.
Have fun! I suppose me coming home early would have been a huge inconvenience for him anyway, huh? Perhaps the truth is that an extension of the trip is a development you've been hoping for, but you also didn't want them to find out that you'd abandoned my daughter, huh? You really don't want that to happen, eh? I'm sure you're wondering if my business trip extension is legit by now. It's just too good to be frickin' true, isn't it? My daughter, who was supposed to be so excited to buy me some souvenirs, was sleeping beside me. I was so sick and disgusted of my husband laying out nothing but lies before my face, smiling at me all the while. After hanging up the phone, I hurriedly prepared to move out. The next day, I called the moving company. Luckily, it wasn't during a busy period of theirs, so they were able to move out the very next day. Perhaps my daughter thought it was strange that our belongings were being packed into big trucks. She was restless since morning. I decided I couldn't keep the truth from her anymore, and I decided to tell her. Nia, darling, listen to Mommy. I've decided to say goodbye to Daddy.
Goodbye to Daddy?
That's right. I can't live with him anymore, sweetheart. He did some terrible things to you, and to me, and I think we'll be happier if we say goodbye to him. But you still love your daddy, don't you? If you want to stay with him, I'll think about it again. What do you think? I didn't feel comfortable at all, asking a 4-year-old child this question. But I thought it would be harder for her if she suddenly ripped away from her daddy without any explanation as to why. I thought it would be harder. Nia had a troubled look on her face. She didn't say anything for maybe a minute or two, and then she said,
I don't like Daddy anymore. He is not my daddy. I want to be with you, Mommy.
Oh, darling, thank you. I'm thinking of going to your Grandpa Joe's house. Do you want to go?
Grandpa Joe? I want to go, I want to go, I want to go.
Nia had decided to go back home with me. She loved her daddy so much, and I supposed it must have been a shock to her when she said she didn't want to be with him anymore. My anger towards my husband became more and more intense. And that's how I went back to my parents' house. My parents were surprised at the fact that suddenly a lot of packages were arriving at their house. My family has been a household name family for many generations, and my father owned several companies. Arthur was an employee in one of these companies, and that's how the two of them got acquainted in the first place. I already mentioned my father loved me to death, but he was also showered as much love, if not more, on his granddaughter. He paid for everything from the wedding to everything that came to my daughter. Her school, her clothes, and everything else she ever needed. And my father even built the house we lived in. When I told him what had happened, he flew into a passionate rage.
I see now. I had no idea Mr. Cambridge was that kind of person. I had high hopes for him, but in the process, I caused you a lot of pain. I'm sorry I put you through all this. I do hope you can forgive me, my dearest.
Oh, I'm fine, Dad. I can't believe he had the nerve to leave his own daughter to fend for herself and went on a trip with his lover.
I'd sell the house, but I doubt the arrangements for such a transaction would be finished anytime soon. So, for the time being, I'm going to turn it into a company dorm. It'll be like a share house. I'll put all of his stuff outside myself, and I'm going to make sure he won't have a home to come back to.
Dad was angrier than I'd ever seen him, and the look he donned on his face was one that honestly sent shivers down my spine. He also instantly made arrangements for an investigation to be conducted on Arthur Cambridge. Using a variety of contacts, it didn't take very long for him to discover that Arthur was right when all this was happening. Not only that, but the identity of the woman whom he's having an affair with also was quickly ascertained. This woman, who turned out to be one Miss Vera Shelby, also worked in one of my father's companies, apparently. I asked my father for all kinds of things for me, because spending time with Nia during these confusing times were of paramount importance, I thought. Once I went back to my parents' house, I had no choice but to quit my job. Of course, I felt bad about quitting so suddenly, so my superiors and I came to an agreement that I would gradually leave over the course of a couple weeks. During that time, because my mother has always been a housewife, I asked her to take care of Nia for a while. And then when my husband finally came home from his trip, he called me, and this is how the conversation went.
Hey, what the hell is this all about? My house is now a company dormitory. I go inside the house and I found people I didn't know who were living here. My belongings were nowhere to be seen. What the hell's going on here?
Ah, so you're finally home, eh? I hope your trip with your little lover went well. I hope you had a good time.
My little lover? What are you talking about?
I had Dad stop by the house to move your stuff out. Every single one of your belongings has been sent to the girl whom you're having an affair with.
What the hell are you on about? Me? An affair? That's preposterous.
You really think you can just turn the other cheek and hope we won't find out? How can you work for my father's company and have the moxie to cheat on the president's daughter with another woman from the same department of the same company? You're out of your mind.
Hey, I don't see Nia anywhere. Is she with you?
Wait, what's this? You're confessing to the alleged act of leaving your own daughter home alone to fend for herself? Brilliant, Mr. Cambridge. And to answer your question, yes, she's with me. You don't have to worry about her anymore, ever. Oh, and by the way, what the hell were you thinking? Leaving your daughter all alone with lots of food and water?
You knew?
What you did was absolutely disgusting. I'm divorcing you, and there's nothing you can do to redeem yourself.
Hold on. Wait just a minute, please. I wasn't having an affair, honest. I just had to rush off to work.
And there he goes again, lying his ass off to me in a way that's so easy to see through. I felt nauseous. You really expect me to believe that load of horse shit? I'm gonna ask you to go through my lawyer for any and all proceedings regarding legal affairs from here on out. I don't want to breathe the same air as you. The very fact I used to makes me want to gag.
Honey, wait a minute, please.
And Dad's very angry with you. He wants you to come to the president's office tomorrow. I suggest you wear your best suit. I think a promotion's in order.
Are you serious?
Oh my god, you're so frickin' pathetic. He's gonna fire you, Arthur Cambridge, and he's gonna make sure you never find a decent job again. By this point, I could tell even over the phone that my husband was crying. He has no goddamn right to cry. That belonged to me, who suffered a betrayal from the man I once loved and hoped to be happy with. And to my daughter Nia, who was convinced her own father hated her enough to leave her alone in the house. According to some additional information, Miss Vera Shelby, the woman whom he was cheating on me with, was already married to another man. Her husband found out she was having an affair because of all the packages that were being delivered to his house. I sent the packages with a certificate letter from a detective agency, along with all the evidence obtained from the investigation. And Arthur's phone was apparently ringing non-stop because the woman whom he was having an affair with. I'm sure it's a call to inform him the cat's out of the bag.
Honey, please forgive me. I was just lost for a little bit. I love you. You're the only one I've ever loved.
Yeah, Keep talking, Casanova. Men who cheat on their girlfriends or wives, they always say they were lost for a little bit, and the only person they ever really loved was you. It's also damn nauseating, and it's shameful you can say all this so nonchalantly.
Mine is true through and through.
Give me all the riches and power in the universe. I would never believe the kind of man who would willingly leave his daughter and cheat on his own wife.
Please.
I can't do this anymore. Just wait until you hear from my lawyer. Goodbye, Mr. Cambridge. I ignored my husband's sobs and hung up the phone. I then proceeded to block all his calls. Dad fired him the very next day. He thought about going home to his parents, but they gave up on him too. That's because Mr. Cambridge Sr., my father-in-law, also runs a small company, and my father supported him with the financial startup he needed for his company. Therefore, my parent-in-laws considered Arthur's betrayal of me was the same as betraying them too, and they were beside themselves with fury. Because my father has a big influence on the business industry for the whole state, he made it impossible for Arthur to find another full-time job, just as I told him rightfully. What's more, the situation was apparently so desperate that Arthur had no other choice but to start living in a low-quality accommodation unit for public laborers. My ex-husband's now in debt due to loans for paying alimony to me and to Mr. Shelby. The income he gets from the public services he does are all used to pay off his debts. My father said with a smile that even if the debt was paid off in full, he was going to keep him in the accommodation unit. I frankly got a little scared about how merciless he could be to someone if they really piss him off. Vera was fired from her jobs alongside Arthur, and her husband filed for divorce as well. Later on, she was ordered to pay me and her ex-husband a large amount of alimony too. She tried to turn to Arthur for help, but because he was pretty much now a public laborer, she couldn't rely on him at all. When my father found out about how she tried to seek help from him, he offered them time together in the same accommodation unit.
They still wanted to be with each other. even if it meant leaving my little darling granddaughter behind. I'm sure they'll be happy together now.
I was even more terrified when I saw my father laughing at someone's misery. I mean, sure, they deserved what they got, but I never dreamed of finding amusing relief in their misfortune. My father really must have been devastated by how his girls were hurt in this whole situation, but make no mistake, I also felt refreshed. I'll let them both stay in the accommodation unit for the rest of their lives, just the two of them, somewhat happily. Since then, we've been living happily at my parents' house. Now to take care of Nia, who is in shock after everything that had happened, I'm now fully jobless, so I can be with her and do everything I can for her to recover mentally. After things calm down a bit, I'm thinking of going to work for my father's company. I know this experience has been traumatic for Nia, but from now on, I'm going to do everything in my power to help her forget the trauma and live the happy life she deserves. And with her Grandma Gwen and her Grandpa Joe around to help me out, I'd say we're in good hands. And my biggest wish now is to see my loving daughter grow into a strong, beautiful, wonderful young lady. Wish us luck, everyone.